Good morning, it's Pastor Curt here, and I'm going to read you three passages from Acts chapter 16, and I want you to guess what all three of these passages have in common. You ready? First one starts in verse 13. It says, "On the Sabbath, we," that's Paul and his team, "went outside the city gate to the river, where we expected to find a place of prayer. We sat down and we began to speak to the women who had gathered there." The second passage starts in verse 16. "Once when we were going to the place of prayer, we were met by a female slave who had a spirit by which she predicted the future." In verse 25, "About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them." Did you figure it out? Do you know what they all three have in common? In each one of these passages, God does a miraculous work to open up the heart of a person far from him. You know, God wants to open hearts, and he wants to use you to do it. The first person is a person named Lydia. She was a wealthy widow merchant. The second person was a demon-possessed teenager, and the third person was a blue-collar jailer. I mean, think about the very first board meeting in the Philippi church. It was like, blue-collar guy and pierced teenager and finely dressed elderly woman. That must have been crazy. I wouldn't have started a church with that diversity of people. Yet God did. Maybe God wants to diversify our lives more. Maybe God wants to open us up to who is far from him that could be close to him if we'll simply have faith. Now, how do you do that? How do you get God to start opening up hearts around you? Well, look at the passages. First thing you notice is this: they were engaged in simple prayer. In each one of those circumstances, they were going to pray or they were already praying. They went down to the river to pray. They were finding a place of prayer. They were in jail praying and praising God. Maybe if we prayed more, God would show us whose heart he's opening up. The second is they had straightforward talk. They simply proclaimed Jesus. They didn't kind of be fancy or mess with words. They were clear about their convictions. Around here at Bayside, we use these things called "You're Invited" cards, and we just give them to our neighbors and friends to invite them to church. And it's funny, even I as a pastor, I'll get nervous. I'll like, hey, if I give this to my friend, will they be offended? And you know what I found? They're almost never offended. People want to be included. Straightforward, simple talk, well, it works. Here's the third thing: simple prayer, straightforward talk, and singular faith. In other words, they believed God was at work. They didn't put pressure on themselves. Oh no, we have to start all these churches. They said, Jesus is leading, we're going to follow, and he's going to do the hard work of changing people's hearts. Same is true today. He's already changing people's hearts. Are your eyes open to it? Are my eyes open to it? I remember my very first Easter at Bayside. I wasn't even on staff yet. We had just done the Mexicali, Mexico outreach, and we went to Arco, where all the Baysiders were gathering, and we were honoring this guy called Louis Zamperini. And so all of these Mexicali teenagers got on stage and helped Lincoln sing worship. And then this 96-year-old man got up on stage, and there was something about the image of these really young people and this veteran follower of Christ. I just began to tear up just watching that. And then we got to the end of the service, and Pastor Ray asked people if they wanted to accept Christ. And I'm not making this up. Right in front of me was a mom with a 2-year-old kid. She'd been wrestling with that 2-year-old kid the whole service. Guess what? She raised her hand. To the left of me, about 3 chairs, was a 70 to 80-year-old woman who lifted her hand up as well. And 4 or 5 chairs to my right was a teenage boy. Man, to see that teenage boy, that soccer mom, and that elderly lady, all three respond to the message of the gospel. It filled my heart with faith. Listen to me. People know they need God. They hunger for the love of God. And he wants to use you to open their hearts. You don't have to be religious. You don't have to be fancy. What you have to do is pray and speak up a little bit, and then put your singular faith in Jesus. He will open hearts all around you.